Not only the women, but also the men who had followed Jesus were also changed as they roamed the countryside with this prophet, teacher, healer, person of God. Working alongside the women, they gave witness to how God treated those left out, drawing them into fullness of life. They learned from Jesus to see women in a new light, to see all those on the outside as insiders with Jesus. Now, this Jesus is gone. Hearing the women tell all that had happened at the tomb, they refuse to believe. The women's story seems like nonsense to them. Jesus' words, Jesus' actions are not remembered. Hope has died. Trust in one another, trust among all those who would follow Jesus is fading. But Peter, not likely convinced either, runs to see for himself. And indeed, to his amazement, Jesus' body is gone. How many of us are skeptical when others tell us how they see God at work in the world, when they tell us what God has done for them? How many of us are afraid to say to someone else what God has done for us? How quickly do we slip back to the old ways of being, much like the male disciples, when we are afraid, when we feel uncertain, when something causes us to question what we thought we believed, even what we have experienced in our very own lives. As these events unfold with the women, the men, Peter, some in the group who follow Jesus leave, heading for Emmaus, a nearby village, and they are sad, profoundly sad, their hopes for freedom crushed, puzzled by the women's news, puzzled still even when the men report Jesus' body really is gone, and then the risen Christ joins them. And they cannot grasp who it is walking along beside them. In an act of kindness, or perhaps out of intrigue, they invite this stranger in to sit at table with them, and in a moment of sudden recognition, these disciples, these followers of Jesus, also experience the holy, and the fire of God's Spirit is burning within them. And immediately they return to tell the others in Jerusalem, only to hear the words back themselves, Christ is risen. Peter also has encountered the holy, and they tell how they themselves came to know Jesus sitting together at table. How often do we recognize the holy in our midst? God's surprises of grace for us, the living Christ walking along beside on our journey, the transforming encounter which could turn our lives upside down so that we will never again be the same. Sometimes we wander our way into transformation while we go about routine, mundane tasks of life, much as the women whose encounter at the empty tomb, while they went about their routine tasks, changed them forever. At times, in the midst of doubt, our questions, our fear, we risk going to see, wanting to know for ourselves, much as Peter did, unsure of what we will find, and find ourselves overtaken by moments of grace. Sometimes, in despair so deep, grief so profound, disappointment so overwhelming, just like the disciples on the road to Emmaus, we discover that Spirit burning within us, opening our eyes to God in our midst, taking us to that holy place in ways we never imagined were possible. Where are you in the resurrection story? Where does the resurrection story make a difference in your life? Is our desire to experience resurrection in our very lives strong enough to risk the encounter with the one who will take us to new spiritual depths we do not yet know, even when it scares us? Do we seek transformation in our lives so intensely we let God take us to new spiritual heights, even when it means we have to let go of old ways in order to embrace the new creation God continues to unfold before us? Are we ready to walk so closely with the living Christ we will see the Christ in our neighbor, in the stranger, in the unknown? William Sloane Coffin said, "Christ is risen to convert us not from this life to some other life, but from something less than life to the possibility of full life." Easter, he says, is a demand not for sympathy with the crucified Christ, but a demand for loyalty to the resurrected Christ. As we celebrate resurrection this day, what difference does it make in your life? What difference does it make in the world? Will you pray with me? Ever creating God, on this most holy day, may we know resurrection in the depths of our being as we are drawn into relationship with the living, risen Christ. Transform us and make us whole. Amen.